All right, and welcome back to the Paisan Sports podcast. Dante DePlacido joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports.
Yes,
and
sir.
now, Zach, what's the deal with inflation? I ordered a pizza last night, $24 for a delivery. Just a pizza and a Diet Coke, and it was only a medium pizza. I remember when it used to be $15 for delivery for a large. What's going on here?
Where'd you? Oh, so you got it from a local place in Township, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
$24. I got medium pepperoni.
Well, the local places, to be honest, they're good. Especially, it's probably an Italian place. So I'll probably give them the credit of that. Maybe a Madigan place. I don't want to talk too much smack about a place I've never been to. You said it was Johnny's?
Johnny's,
okay. Or it sounds like it's got a nice little Italian flavor to it by the name, but I haven't never had it myself. But yeah, it's expensive nowadays. That's why I don't get the delivery either, because you're already getting ran. Like I've worked jobs of primarily make your money based off tips. So like I'll always tip if it comes to it, but I try and just bypass that situation in general and just go to the place and pick it up. Especially if it's like too early.
Here's the thing. Now, even if you pick up, you're still pressured into tipping a little bit.
Yeah, I'll throw a little something on there, but
well, yeah, I usually throw
major.
in $1 if I'm picking up, or maybe $2. But just a medium pepperoni pizza and a 20-ounce Diet Coke, so not even like a 2-liter, just like a normal bottle, and $24.
Yeah,
$24.
it's tough out here nowadays.
Ridiculous.
You want to talk about inflation real quick? The Amish market used to have those fire pretzel logs, 3 for $9. Get them for $3 each, and they're stuffed with like this, that, the other, buffalo chicken, cheesesteak, and now they're 3 for $15. And that was over like an evolution of less than 10 years. They're almost double the price. So that just goes to show you.
Inflation's gone crazy lately, and I think it's because minimum wage like skyrocketed to I think $14 an hour now. We're not going to.
Well, everything's just really expensive. You ever try and order wings real quick? You ever try and order wings nowadays? You used to get them for like $10 for like a 10 wings, and now it's like $16, $17. Especially if you deliver it, you're paying $2 per wing, essentially.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's just wings on DoorDash. They're very reasonably priced, and they're pretty decent. They're not fantastic, but they're decent enough, and they're very reasonably priced. Their curly fries are amazing. That's what makes it worth it. And I don't know if they still do, but they did fried Oreos for a while as well. So it's just wings. Sponsor us.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, moving on. The Eagles, on the 5-year anniversary of the 38-7 game against the Vikings, they do it again, this time to the Giants, beating them down 38-7. What a game.
What a game. And I think the first thing when everybody sees that score, 38-7, is kind of just like NFC Championship 2018 all over. 2017 season, but it was played in 2018, and it was 38-7 in that game at the Link, and the place was bumping. It looked a little rough early. The Vikings went up 7-0, and then bang. But this game, there was no questions asked about it. It was done, sealed, and delivered. Yeah. I thought by halftime it was going to be like 28-0. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the Giants ended up getting a nice drive smacked in between there, but the Eagles dominated the entire game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you can't really put much stock into that one touchdown drive by the Giants because the game was well over at that point. It was more so like a garbage time touchdown. Even though it was in the third quarter, it still felt more like a garbage time touchdown. But, the one thing I noticed while watching, I believe it was First Take this morning, is they were saying on there like, oh, I was surprised to see Jalen Hurts running on the move, throwing that 40-yard pass to start off the game. I thought they'd be more cautious with him, blah, 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 blah. But the Week 18 game with Jalen Hurts, that was them being cautious with him. That was the cautious game. Like when you come back from an injury, you have a game where you are cautious with your QB, and then you got a week of rest after that, and then the playoff game. And that's what I tried saying when I came on the podcast after that bad game against the Giants, and everybody was freaking out. Everybody was overreacting. And I said, well, they were playing cautious with him. They weren't having him do a whole lot. They were playing very cautious. They just wanted to get the easy win against the Giants backups. And for some reason, people thought that's the Jalen Hurts we would see in the playoffs, and I tried to say that isn't what we would see in the playoffs, and they let it loose with him. They let him do what he did all season. They let him do what he does best.
And it made a lot of sense to just be able to open up the offense then. You weren't going to show a team that you potentially, who they ended up playing in the playoffs, a look in Week 18 for no reason, even though you're vying for the 1 seed. They still ran. They were, for the people that said they were a little not cautious with them, well, yeah, they want to win the game. They won handedly. More so in a closer game, you might see Hurts have more than 9 rushing attempts, and there was built-in specific quarterback runs, and they scored a touchdown on it. And the run game just in general was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, look at the backups. Kenny Gainwell played like the 4th most snaps, like 27 total snaps, the 4th most snaps he's played all season. Before that game, he hadn't even eclipsed over 40 yards rushing in a game all this year, and he goes for 112. And obviously a lot had to do with that 30-yard touchdown run, but if you take that 30-yard touchdown run at the end of the game away from his 112 total,
it's still 82 yards.
Exactly, it's still 80 yards. Jalen Hurts scored on one of his quarterback runs, and they were not being cautious, as people would say, but he could have ran a lot more, and he didn't need to, because if you look at it at the end of the day, the matchups, the Eagles just have so many weapons that you cannot deal with, especially a team like the Giants, who pretty much have really done their damage on defense with the pressure that they've been able to get. And Hurts really wasn't under pressure too much on Saturday night.
Well, that also goes back to what I said about Lane Johnson, because a lot of the pressure they had been getting was from Kayvon Thibodeau. And I'd said previously that Lane Johnson, time and time again, he's shown us that anytime you go up against an elite pass rusher on the left side, Lane Johnson has showed us that there is nothing to worry about as long as he's out there playing right tackle. And he showed us yet again against the Giants.
And it also helps when you got guys like Jason Kelce, literally one arm throwing 300-plus pound defensive tackles. That's seen as like one of his liabilities of him not being able to have strength. But his technique is so good. I mean, obviously he's strong as well. But when you match it with a guy that's 330 pounds and being able to just like literally toss him out the club with one arm, that's why. I mean, I think Jason Kelce, every week that he plays football, literally just adds to the case of, like, we're talking about unbiasedly, potentially the greatest singular center to ever play football.
Yeah, I mean, I could put him in that conversation. He's definitely a future.
I know, obviously, like, if we're talking just literally in Eagles history, Chuck Bednarik playing both sides of the ball, playing pretty much 100% of the snaps, playing center and linebacker, and just the contributions that he made. It's even hard for Jason Kelce to just be the best center of all time. But if we're looking about technique, production, talent, skill, I mean, Jason Kelce, what gets better than him at the center position?
Yeah, well, the one thing is, there's never been a center with the athleticism as Kelce, with the ability to run downfield on running plays and continue to just eat up blocks downfield. We've never seen that out of the center position other than what we've seen from Jason Kelce. The funny thing is, potentially we might see it somewhat again with Cam Jurgens once Kelce retires, because it's looking like Cam Jurgens is really the same type of center.
And that's the thing,
Kelce
too. We just haven't seen a center like this before, ever, really. Like the athleticism, where the agility, he's also able to throw guys out. But maybe a lot of the centers that you classify at the top upper echelon of all-time greats are more so those guys that understand the game well and get their offense into really good positions, which Jason Kelce is more than capable of doing. But just his literal talent on the field and how versatile he's able to be. It's not just Lane Johnson, which everybody talks about. Obviously, Lane Johnson's phenomenal when he comes back, but it's a team effort when all these guys are going. It was a little bit scary to see Landon Dickerson get banged up at some point in the game, but they relatively stayed healthy throughout the game. There was no injuries, so they're going to go into this 49ers NFC Championship pretty much healthy.
I will tell you to hold off just for a second there, because I did hear that Lane Johnson was in some discomfort after the game. He wasn't.
But I mean, with an injury like that, you would expect that. That's why Jalen Hurts.
But I'm saying it's not 100% Lane Johnson's going to suit up.
I think he's going to suit up regardless.
I think he is,
and he's going to get the go. But
I think he is as well. But I don't think there's 100% chance.
But there's also, that's just what it was. Like, Hurts was sore after playing the Giants game, and they weren't even allowing him to throw during the bye week, really, in practice. Even when, like, the open media sessions, they were saying that none of the media members saw him throwing during that week because they were being extra cautious. And obviously, not playing football for a good extended period of time, you're going to be sore regardless. So not having that every single week. Just being used to being banged up after a game, especially Lane Johnson. He's playing in the trenches,
but that's the thing, too, is Hurts had an extra week to get rid of that soreness before the game against the Giants, whereas Lane Johnson isn't going to have that. Like I said, I think he's going to suit up. I'm confident he is. But
yeah, but the good thing is,
so
this is just a one game. Obviously, it's not ideal being the NFC Championship where you have to win this game to make it to the Super Bowl, but then he gets that extended bye week for the Pro Bowl week.
I can tell you one thing. As confident as I am against the Niners, and I am very confident against the Niners, if Lane Johnson doesn't suit up, then I am
it definitely makes a lot more nerve-wracking. And
going up against Nick
the
Bosa.
way that DeMeco Ryans runs his defense, I don't expect him to have Bosa on Lane Johnson, knowing that Lane Johnson's their best pass-blocking offensive lineman the whole time. He's going to move them around. A lot of Nick Bosa's sacks and sack production has come from him moving all over the place and just running twists and different defensive lineman stunts to get him open. If you look at it, we're not going to dive too much into it because we're actually going to do a preview for the AFC and NFC Championship on Thursday. Make sure you guys check that out. We'll obviously promote it beforehand, but just a quick look into it. If you look at Nick Bosa and the 49ers overall, we're going off regular season stats. If you look at their regular season stats as a team, they had 44 total sacks as a defense, and Nick Bosa had 18.5 of those. So if you take Nick Bosa out of the equation, that's 42% of their sacks were produced by Nick Bosa. If you can, obviously they're going to do everything they can to put the focus on Nick Bosa. They got phenomenal players across the entire defensive line, like Eric Armstead. Did you see the play at the end of the game real quick? Did you see Dak when he rolled out on the last drive and he was in the end zone and he like almost ran over Eric Armstead? I think Dak literally did not see him. Didn't see him on the field.
Here's the thing with that play.
I don't want to get too deep into it and get off tangent of what I'm saying.
I'm not going to get too deep into it, but what I'm going to say really quick is that's a result of all of these nonsensical roughing the passer calls on sacks, because what you're starting to see now is
how he
pass rushers, they don't want to tackle them to the ground now because they're afraid they're going to get hit with that roughing the passer, so they try to just just try to hit them hard to knock them off their feet, and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes the QB stays on their feet, and then there's no sack because of it.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and that's not the first time I've seen that.
But
happen.
The thing is, like, I agree with what you're saying. Like, Eric pulled up on that play, but what I was referring to was, I don't think Dak literally saw Eric Armstead until he was making contact with him. And which would have been a safety. I don't think he saw him whatsoever, and it was almost a safety. But they still have some talent on their defensive line outside of Nick Bosa. Obviously, they had Drake Jackson, who's been a good rookie from USC, Fred Warner, and I'm drawing a blank on the other linebacker's name real quick because I just was completely Greenlaw. They're two of the best inside linebacker duos in the entire league. You know what I mean? They got guys, but Nick Bosa is a huge part of why that pressure is made. He's a huge part of 42% of their sacks in the regular season were because of Nick Bosa. So there's obviously going to be extra emphasis if we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, what they're going to do to try and mitigate that, because as good as a runner and as good as their offensive line is, some of the scrambles that Jalen Hurts does to get outside of the pocket just create sack situations, especially against arguably the best defense in football in the San Francisco 49ers. But the Eagles pass rush definitely has the upper hand over every team they play. The 49ers offensive line, these are two very similar teams. 49ers offensive line is phenomenal in itself, had the best left tackle in the game. We had the best right tackle in the game. You can go either way with it. They have good guys across the offensive line. But especially with the 49ers, their skill position players are really good blockers, and George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, and what they're able to do with those guys. But the Eagles' defensive line is just different. We're talking about a team that has a 15-sack gap between the next leading team in the regular season in sacks, 70, which was 2 off the all-time record for the league, even though with the extended 17 games, the next closest was 55 in the NFL. So, I mean, that just shows this Eagles front is just different, and it's going to be an interesting matchup in the trenches for both teams. I mean, the Eagles did their thing versus the Giants the other day too with the pass rush, with having Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat having 1.5 sacks in that game. There was a strip sack, Josh Sweat strip sack later on in the game when the Giants were pretty much completely passing the ball, and I just think that's going to be a huge, huge difference.
Well, here's the thing, is the Eagles and the 49ers, they both have a top 3 pass rusher on the left side. I would put Hassan Reddick third in the league in terms of pass rushers. So you have Nick Bosa on the left side for the 49ers, and you have Hassan Reddick on the left side for the Eagles. The difference is the Eagles have the much better right tackle. So the Eagles are going to do, in my opinion, a much better job at countering, the pass rush from Nick Bosa by having Lane Johnson out there. But I don't think the 49ers are going to have the same amount of success in stopping Hassan
Well, I think
Reddick.
Jordan Mailata is better than Mike McGlinchey. Like, if you're going left tackle and Trent Williams being the best at his position, Lane Johnson's the best right tackle. And if you look at the opposite sides of what being able to match up, because like I said, the 49ers are crafty, which they move their guys all around the place, and Nick Bosa just isn't in one spot. Especially, he could just end up in a whole other spot, lining up in one spot because of the twist and just defensive stunts that they run. But I would say Jordan Mailata on the left side compared to going from Trent Williams to Mike McGlinchey, the Notre Dame guy, on the right side. Yeah, the Eagles are better, but it's just going to be a game of numbers and what they're able to produce. So I think the 49ers are going to try and come after Jalen Hurts and make him as uncomfortable as he possibly can in the pocket. And like I said, the Eagles actually allowed 44 sacks this year in the regular season. But why the Eagles defensive line has the upper edge is because Nick Bosa, like we said, 42% of the sacks for the 49ers in the regular season were produced by him. The Eagles set the record in NFL history for having 4 guys with 10+ sacks. So you can get pressured from all over.
And that's the thing. If you have Lane Johnson almost shut down Nick Bosa, I don't think Lane Johnson's going to completely shut him down, but I think he's definitely going to make a huge impact on things. If you have Lane Johnson almost take Nick Bosa completely out of the equation, then the 49ers they're not left with as much. And Hassan Reddick, I think he's still going to be able to get his because they don't have that kind of right tackle stopping Hassan Reddick. And the other thing too, what we're starting to see from Jonathan Gannon, which we've seen a bit earlier in the season, but what we definitely saw with him against the Giants is he can get really creative with the kind of blitzes he sends. He'll create different stunts and he'll come up with new creative ways to get to the quarterback, and they're usually very effective. The thing that worries me a little bit about Gannon is if he's going to send a lot of blitzes against Brock Purdy, because even though the Cowboys lost to the 49ers, what they did do was they seemingly kind of wrote the book on how to stop this 49ers offense. And that is sent a lot of pressure at Brock Purdy, because when Brock Purdy was being pressured in that game against Dallas, he was not effective at all. The offense was not effective at all. So if you're
Dallas is also one of the best teams in the league, though. If you want to give credit to them, their defense has kind of fell off at the end, but they create a lot of turnovers. They actually led the league in turnovers, and they can get after it. But the one thing you saw in the Eagles-Giants game, we want to save some of the 49ers-Eagles preview talk for Thursday, but the one thing you saw that could become an issue if you send blitzers was, if you saw in the beginning of the Giants game, they were running a lot of swings out of the backfield with Saquon to get the defense flowing one way, because obviously that's their best offensive player, and they would either run him left or right as a swing and get those linebackers to over pursue, and that's what opened up the middle of the field on some of the success. Obviously, the Giants didn't have a lot of success, but some of the success that they did have was from just moving Saquon all around and just getting them the ball. So you can't do that versus the 49ers, where if they're moving Christian McCaffrey all around, he's arguably one of the best players in all of football when he's on the field versus anybody, and he's going to just put so much emphasis and attention where you have to put like a CJ Gardner-Johnson, who that's a mismatch for the Eagles, on Christian McCaffrey. And then you still have to stop Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle running all over the middle of the field. So I don't know how successful, even though it looked like there is some susceptibility to the 49ers offensive line, even though I think they were like 6th in the NFL in allowed sacks this year. It was like right over 30. It was like 31 or 32. But getting pressure after a young quarterback in general is always a good idea. But just with those skill position players, that's where I'd be nervous about. But we're going to save the 49ers-Eagles talk
Yeah, we're going to
Thursday.
save that for later. But right now, it is time for me to give my meatball of the week. And my meatball of the week is no other than Dak Prescott. Because Dak Prescott, 7 years in the league now, still has failed to take his team to the NFC Championship game. And not only that, but with the game on the line, a 2-minute drill in hand, Dak had to make something happen, had to get downfield, score a game-tying touchdown. What did he do? First play, almost a pick six. Lucky for him, the linebacker dropped it. What happened the second play? Deep ball, misfired. It looked like it was underthrown. It was an incompletion. And then the third play, took a sack. And because of that succession of plays, because of Dak's history of not performing well under pressure, and when I say that, I refer back to games like the game against Jacksonville, where it's in overtime, do or die time. He throws a pick six to lose the game almost immediately. Because the Cowboys see this from Dak, now they have a lack of confidence in him. Now it's 4th and 10. They're running out of time. Instead of going for it, they end up punting it away because they had no confidence that Dak could pick up that 4th down, and they basically conceded the game by punting it away.
No, I wholeheartedly, completely disagree with that specific. I'm not going to say Dak didn't play bad down the stretch. But I don't think that his performance came into what? Obviously, the situation that he put them in, being on 4th down from the 25, you just can't go for it then. You're ending the game on spot. You can't go for it.
If you're the Bengals and you have Joe Burrow, you're confident Joe Burrow's picking up that 1st down. If you're the Eagles and you have Jalen Hurts, you're confident Hurts is picking up that 1st down. The Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, you're confident Patrick Mahomes is picking up that 1st down.
I don't think that's the wise football decision, game management wise, to do that.
Well,
when
no,
you have essentially four timeouts on the clock with a 2-minute warning and 3 timeouts.
But the game was almost over. It's like 1 first down and the game's pretty much done. You have to go for it in that scenario. It's do or die.
Yeah, but
time.
also you got to think about the way Dallas's defense played. Dallas defense kept them in the game. So, I mean, you have to ride the momentum of thinking that your defense can get the stop there when you have that. If you don't have as many timeouts and they can just completely ice you out, and Dallas did the right thing where they actually did get the ball back. Obviously not with any resources to use, but they had the ball back. But they also waited.
Not with nearly enough amount of time, with 0 timeouts. Once they got the ball back, they had 0 chance to win
the momentum of that drive for the first 3 plays to go that badly, and for them to think that they were going to get a 1st down when they have essentially, like I said, 4 timeouts. The game is over right after that.
But that's what I'm saying. It's because Dak looked so bad on those first 3 plays that they didn't have the confidence in him to pick up the 1st down.
I think any team in football at their own 25-yard line with essentially 4 timeouts on the clock
I don't think
would
so.
punt the ball in that situation.
I think the Chiefs are going for that. I think the Bengals are going for that.
I don't think that's the
wise
Eagles
are going for that.
I don't think that's the wise football.
I don't think it's wise to punt it away with the game almost over. And it's the playoffs. You got to make something happen.
I mean, it's different if we're talking under the 2-minute clock with no timeouts left. Yes, you're going for it. But if you have 4 timeouts on the board, including, like we said, the 2-minute warning, and there's 2:40 on the clock, you got to punt that ball away. And they ended up getting the ball back, but they just couldn't succeed. I mean, let's talk about the Dalton Schultz.
Enough amount of time left.
But you're also just like, they were screwed to begin with. That's what we also have to agree on.
Exactly. So if you're screwed to begin with, you have nothing to lose in that scenario.
You get screwed.
So just go for it. You have nothing to lose now.
I don't agree with that at all. That's a Nathaniel Hackett decision. That's what Nathaniel Hackett, and that's why he's not coaching a football team anymore. But let's talk about Dalton Schultz, too, on the last drive, just stepping out of bounds on a 25-yard catch. Immediately when I saw that, I'm like, yo, he did not catch that ball. He did not get both feet in bounds. That was like one of those Madden glitches where you press A for the possession catch and it just doesn't work, and you just step out of bounds where you're wide open. Like, Dalton Schultz screwed over a potential Hail Mary to what they had to resort to, one of the dumbest play calls that I've seen. I mean, first off, so you expect the defense to just go right when you have Zeke snapping the ball, you expect the defense to just be like, all right, well, Zeke's going to be a factor in the play, and we're just not going to just completely I don't even know what the word would be, because he got just completely like a shotgun shell to the stomach the way he got blown up by the defensive lineman. Well, you think a defensive lineman's going to try and cover him in general and lay off a pass rush with him at center being the only blocking player just so that he can't catch a ball over the middle of the field? Like, why would you not just run through him and do that? And that's the IQ of the 49ers players and why they're so good, because they're so well coached and they have a lot of IQ. They might not have the most talent all over the place on their defense, but they have really high IQ, and it's like, that's exactly what you needed to do, and then that makes Dak throw the ball immediately. I mean, first off, Dak should have immediately, with having the linemen split out like that, he should have immediately just thrown the ball right off the rip to one of those outside guys, and he throws the ball to the slot, and he gets blown up as well, just as hard as Zeke got hit. So it's like, what are you doing?
It was the dumbest drawn-up play I'd seen in the NFL since that
Pat McAfee Colts play, the punt play.
Yes, that was the dumbest play I've seen since then. I mean, they did all of that with the formation, with putting Zeke in at center, snapping the ball down. They did all that just for the play to immediately get blown up. They never even got the chance
that's back-to-back.
to lateral.
The funniest part is that's back-to-back years that they have absolutely had no clue what they were doing on the last play versus the 49ers who ended their season.
And not only that, but there was the play before that where They caught the ball guy out of bounds, but they ran backwards out of bounds.
Yeah, but I mean,
which if you do that, the clock keeps running.
But that was also Ward just making a really good play and hitting him out of bounds. There's nothing he can do there. What's he going to try and hurdle him and move forward? Like, he's doing everything he can to get forward out of bounds. It's just Ward set the edge of the sidelines and pushed him backwards knowing that. And that's why you saw him immediately. He was like, yo, run that clock, because he knew that. And that's why I was talking about the IQ of those 49ers players. But let's get to the AFC. We spent a lot of time talking about the NFC. Let's get to the AFC a little bit and what transpired over there. Last week on the podcast, we promoted for the Paisan Picks, Bengals money line plus 200. They dominated. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to sit here with me saying all week that the Bengals I thought they were gonna dominate in that fashion, but I told you all week the Bengals were winning this game and to get your money ready. And if you would have put that bet in last week, we also told you 4-1 odds plus 400 to win the AFC. So if you have that ticket now, I think it's like plus 260 for them to win the AFC. So, and the line keeps moving on the Bengals Chiefs game, but we're going to get more into the preview of the
real
championship.
Quick, while we're still on the topic of Paisan Picks. Now, on last week's podcast, I gave my Paisan pick a 3-leg parlay. I said take Joe Burrow's over in passing touchdowns, which was 1.5. He hit 2. I said take the Bengals spread, because I said even if the Bengals didn't win, it would be a close game. They ended up winning. But I said take Joe Burrow passing yards over, which very well could have hit, but the Bills did such a crappy job in this game that they didn't even have to throw the ball at the end, and Joe Burrow finished shy of 271 passing yards. So that was disappointing to see. But I also said, maybe even take an alternative Joe Burrow 225 plus passing yards. So if you would have listened to that as well as the rest of the parlay, you would have made some money. But unfortunately, we fell short of those 271 passing yards.
Yeah, it was close. I mean, they ran. I don't think anybody expected them to run the ball down the throats, especially with the circumstances of the offensive line being so banged up, and even starters that were in there playing banged up as well, like their center. But the Bengals are just winners, and that's why I thought they were going to win this game. And that's why I promoted it that way. And so if you had that ticket, like we said from the last podcast, we're going to give you some more Paisan picks in a few minutes from now. But yeah, the Bengals are just a really good team. They've proven to win. Last year in the playoffs when they went on their Cinderella run, but I wouldn't even really call it a Cinderella run because they won their division, so they were a top 4 seed in the AFC. And Joe Burrow is just a known winner. So maybe since he only had one outstanding season at LSU, that's why people still don't believe in the guy. But I mean, it's hard not to like Joey Burrow, and especially I grew up a Ravens fan, and I'll tell you with full confidence, like it's not even, I don't even have to like clear my brain of biasness like when I do that. It's obviously hard when I'm talking about the Steelers or the Cowboys, being an Eagles and Ravens fan, but the Bengals, I just know how good and serious Joe Burrow is at his craft, and it's just like, I think, like we talked about before the podcast, the AFC Championship is going to be between the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think all season, the whole media, you want to talk about meatball of the week, I'll give you my meatball of the week right now. The whole season, did we not hear about, especially after they beat down the Rams, who ended up being absolutely horrendous in the first game of the season? Oh, the Bills are unstoppable. They're so superior to every team. No team's going to even be in the same breath as them. They're the team to beat. Josh Allen, right off the rip, even though throwing 2 picks in the first game, was like the heavy MVP favorite. They're the heavy Super Bowl favorite, this, that, the other, and they crumble once again, and they have not won in that era. And Joe Burrow, in his second year in the playoffs, is what, 5-1? Is he 4-1 or 5-1? He's 4-1 right now. Could move to 5-1 with a win over. Actually, won 3 last year in 4 games because they play in the wild card round. Won 2 this year already, so he is 5-1 in his playoff career, and his only loss being in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, it just tells you right there. I think Josh Allen's uberly talented, top 5 quarterback guaranteed in the NFL. I also wanted to ask you in a little bit who your top 5 quarterbacks were at this point in the season, just in general in the NFL. But Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, just not the same. Joe Burrow is a winner, and it's just proven.
Yeah. And
every time they matched up, Joe Burrow's had his number too.
He definitely is. And I think Joe Burrow has a bit of a chip on his shoulder in the playoffs this year, because you saw how close the Bengals came to possibly winning the Super Bowl last year. I mean,
well,
it was really
everybody,
the difference of like a half a second.
Yeah, but
with that
how would you feel as like a guy like Joe Burrow? As a guy like Joe Burrow, you know how intense and serious, especially if you give him bulletin board material. You see everybody online. We're going to the Georgia Dome, and we're going to go, or the Superdome, and we're going to go see the neutral site AFC game. Everyone's buying tickets, and it's locked in. That's not, you know what I mean? it's Chiefs Bills. There's no other way around it. And it's like the Bengals came in like, we know we're going to win this game on the road. And it was bad conditions, which Cincinnati is used to playing in, being from the Northeast, and Buffalo. That's supposed to be a part of their home field advantage along with their crazy fan base, and they just got completely ran out of their own building.
Yeah, and even though we've moved on for the Eagles, I want to say real quick, when you talk about a guy like Joe Burrow, who's just a winner, who has that kind of mindset, I just want to give a shout out real quick to Jalen Hurts, because I was saying this all throughout the game against the Giants, that Jalen Hurts has that Mamba mentality that you absolutely need on your team. He's that guy who's going to go out there and he's going to do everything he can in his power to win, and he's not going to accept defeat. And he even had a chip on his shoulder going up against one of the guys who had him benched in Alabama, but him and Joe Burrow are just those two kind of guys that have just laser focus. They're not going to accept defeat, and they're going to go out there and give it their all every time. And that's the kind of mindset.
And people had such tempered expectations for the Eagles too. I don't understand it. Like, DraftKings was offering like an over 1.5 passing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts, and that cashed in the first 10 minutes of the game for me. And I just made my money and I ran away.
I don't know if you heard, but 82% of the bets on Eagles versus Giants, 82% of the bets were on not even the spread. They were on the Giants' money line. 82% of the people thought the Giants would win outright.
Have fun wasting your money. That's so outrageous. People forgot in a short period of time that a healthy Eagles, which some of their guys are still banged up, and they're still superior, it looks like, to every team right now. And I feel confident saying that because the whole media said it about the Bills the entire season. And I knew they were going to crumble because Josh Allen has not proven to win. And it's not just on him. Stephon Diggs, who a lot of people like see his passion in the game, it seems like he could potentially maybe be on his way out for the way he was reacting to not getting the ball. And it just seems like they're not what they're painted out to be. You know, when things are going good, you know, things seem amazing and everything, but they've yet to get over the hump, and it always seems like they crumble.
They remind me of the, what did they call that Clippers team with Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, like Lob City? Yeah, they remind me of the Lob City Clippers. They're fun to watch in the regular season. They win a ton of games. They get to the playoffs, but then they fall short of expectations every single time. And you know, that's kind of. I
mean, I will say things with Von Miller would be a lot different, but that's essentially only one player. And now that contract with him coming off a major injury, even though he looked phenomenal when he did play this year, coming off a major injury like that at that age and giving him that much money, like, does that contract? I mean, I believe in Von Miller wholeheartedly. I think he's one of the greatest players of all time. But, I mean, coming off a serious injury like that, it's going to see how they need to make some improvements. And I think Gabe Davis was hyped up to be his performance last year, having 4 touchdowns in the playoffs versus the Chiefs. But I feel like their passing game is just not consistent enough because they haven't had a leap like Gabe Davis. Like, he's either really there and really playing and really making plays, or he's just not. And they're just inconsistent in general. So, and their defense did not show what we've seen all season. So they're going to have to make some changes over there. And things are just going to have to be a little bit different. So
yeah, well, anyway, it's now time to move on to the Paisan Picks for this week. And now, before we give our picks, I understand you do have a person or two you want to shout out from the Discord who was able to pull off some decent bets.
Yes, sir. Shout out to everybody in the Discord right now. We're actually at like 310 people, which is pretty lit. We were at like 140 a month ago, and I created it actually like almost exactly to a year to the day. This time last year in the end of January, and I had like 20 people in there for a minute when I was going hard with the sports bet. So I appreciate everybody trickling in. I want to give out a shout out to my boy Landry, who's always holding it down with the soccer picks at all times. We have all sports being covered in this channel. There's always some good soccer action, especially with the World Cup. And we recently had a South Jersey guy in Victor, I think it's BP, but everybody knows if you're in the Discord who it is. He's consistently, since he's joined like 2 weeks ago, he's already like a level 12, and he's constantly putting picks out there, and he's hitting a lot of high odds bets too. So some of them he promotes pregame, and some of them he keeps to himself, keep the aces up the sleeve, not to jinx it. But I think yesterday I saw him hit a $3 for like $200 bet on NFL football. So
wow.
I mean, he's really doing his thing. So yeah, and if you just follow the Discord in general, we're always giving out consistent picks, so make sure you guys go hop into the What's the Deal Sports Discord, and we'll keep growing that number. Once we get to maybe like 500 people, we're going to be doing something special for you guys. But I know you guys want to hear about the actual picks. So if we have some early Paisan picks right now that we can get to, like we said, we're going to be doing a podcast on Thursday about the NFC and AFC championships, and we're going to dive in for like a whole hour on each matchup. So we don't want to give too much away. But Dante, have you seen anything that you like so far? Because if we're being honest, if we're going to bet on the NFL specific for the Paisan picks right now, I feel pretty good about putting a 2-leg parlay in, and that being the Eagles money line and the Bengals money line making it to the Super Bowl. I think the world of Patrick Mahomes. I love Andy Reid, being the former Eagles coach, and I just think even if I wasn't an Eagles fan, Andy Reid's one of the greatest coaches of all time. You saw the stat where he's the first coach in NFL history to have 10-plus playoff wins with 2 different franchises. I mean, it's all said and done. But the Chiefs have been playing a lot of young players this season. They're very reliant on their top-level players, and with Patrick Mahomes hurt, getting banged up in that game in a very, very ugly takedown inside the pocket. Came back into the game, but it was close with the Jaguars, probably closer than comfort for a lot of those Chiefs fans, and I think that might have to play into it. So if you parlay the Chiefs and the Bengals money lines together on the early access, these lines are going to move. I saw the Bengals at plus money, and it's already moved to minus 106, really close to the Chiefs minus 110. So with a banged up Mahomes, I'm running with the Cincinnati Bengals money line minus 106 and the Philadelphia Eagles money line minus 146. You place that in a 2-leg parlay together, and it comes out to be plus 227 odds. And that's a done deals bet for the NFL playoffs. I'm gonna get into some more player prop bets as the week moves on, especially when we do Thursday's podcast, the AFC and the NFC championship previews. But if you want to get an early position in case the Bengals line Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes gets reported to be even more banged up or more sore than expected, and that line really moves, get your positions in on that plus 227 2-leg parlay for the AFC and NFC championships now. Dante, what do we got?
So now, my Paisan pick for this week is not an NFL bet because, as I've mentioned previously, I don't like betting on the Eagles unless we're talking player props. I'm superstitious. Last 2 times I bet on the Eagles money line, they lost. I don't touch it. So I got nothing for the NFL this week. I agree with putting money on the Bengals money line. I agree with that. I think they can get this win against the Chiefs, so maybe make a parlay with that money line as well as some player props. I'll get more into that on Thursday. But for right now, my Paisan pick is for the Sixers. And this is going to be for the Sixers game coming up against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, there isn't any player props currently available for this game yet on FanDuel, but this is something. This is a parlay I use for virtually any Sixers game, and it's virtually a lock every time because the Sixers, their player tendencies in terms of the kind of performance they put up game in and game out is very steady. So the Sixers are, when it comes to player props, they're a very safe team to bet on, in my opinion, because you take Joel Embiid 30-plus points. That's almost a lock every night. And it's not bad odds because he's not blowing that out of the water every night. So take Embiid 30-plus points. Now take Harden 15-plus points, maybe even 10. I would say maybe put 10 against the Brooklyn Nets because, he'll have Ben Simmons.
I mean, 10 we're talking about, not to chime in here, but 10's we're talking minus 3,500. So you might as well not even add it. I would agree with 15, but 10 is not even.
But then the other thing you're going to do is you're going to take Harden 10-plus assists. Or no, take 10 or maybe take 8. There's still good odds on 8, but he's a lock for at least 8 assists every night, virtually a lock for 10 assists every night. So take Embiid 30-plus, Harden 10-plus assists. You're also going to take Harden 2-plus threes. He's a lock pretty much every night for 2 threes, and he usually doesn't hit more than 2. It's usually just 2 every night. And then if you want, take Harden 4-plus rebounds. Usually a lock for that. Might not be the best odds on it. He's a little hit and miss with his rebounds. But the one thing that stays consistent basically every Sixers game is Embiid 30 points, Harden 15 points, Harden 8 to 10 assists, and Harden 2-plus threes made. It's a lock almost every game. So take that against the Brooklyn Nets. And that's my Paisan pick.
Dante, I actually just found something interesting when I was scouting the books here. So you know how I just said that if you take the Eagles and the Bengals money lines together, it's plus 227 odds in a 2-leg parlay. You actually can get a little bit more juice on that by just betting the Super Bowl correct matchup. And if you take the Bengals versus the Eagles to make it, so that was obviously them both winning this upcoming weekend in the AFC and NFC championships, that's actually plus 240 odds. So you get a
compared
plus,
to what was the other
plus
one again?
227. So it's a plus 13 uptick.
Get a little bit of a
but
boost.
it's definitely worth getting the juice. So I actually think I'm going to put that. But I mean,
yeah,
you can't go wrong with either one.
Exact bet.
Exactly. It's just like how in the NBA, if you take a player prop and it's like 6+ rebounds, or you take the over 5.5, it's usually the 6+ like bands of that are like -5 odds better than like the other one, but it's not really that big of a difference. Or if you feel really confident, I mean, you can go Super Bowl forecast, which is the team in the Super Bowl and who's going to win. You can take the Eagles to beat the Bengals plus 550 in the Super Bowl already. So if you want to add a little bit of juice, and while we're at it here already, Patrick Mahomes is plus 320, banged up right now to be the Super Bowl MVP. So win 2 more games, the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl. While we don't know the exact extent of his injury, he's the highest odds. Jalen Hurts is plus 5.
Do they have
plus 350? So he's only plus 30.
Do they have any other Eagles players on there as possible?
Well, the top 4 guys, Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, are both plus 350. Mahomes is the leader, plus 320. Brock Purdy is plus 650. So the top 4 quarterbacks that are left, the starting quarterbacks of each team, are the top 4 odds. The fifth highest odds outside of a non-quarterback is Christian McCaffrey at plus 1,400.
What about Eagles position players? Any Eagles position
Jamar
players
Chase,
on there?
the position players is number 1 is Christian McCaffrey, position player, plus 1,400. Jamar Chase plus 2,100. Debo plus 2,500. Travis Kelce plus 2,500. A.J. Brown is the first Eagles position player at plus 3,500.
What about Hassan Reddick?
But that just shows you the Eagles are the best overall team because they're not relying on this player, that player. Like, they get contributions literally from everybody. Like, I might put money on James Bradbury to be the Super Bowl MVP.
I would say if you can find
Bradbury?
Hassan Reddick on there, I would say he's not a bad bet at all for Super Bowl.
Wow, they don't
MVP.
even have James Bradbury's not on here.
Yeah, I wouldn't think they would, but if Hassan Reddick's on there, that's probably pretty good odds. I could see him making.
Hassan Reddick's not even. Oh, yeah, actually, is plus 10,000.
I would take that. I would
plus
put
10,000.
I'd put 10.
That's interesting.
I'd put $10 on Hassan Reddick winning Super Bowl MVP. I could definitely see him in this.
Smitty's actually not that far behind AJ Brown. He's plus 4,500. Really? So Smitty's actually.
I would say 10,000 for Hassan Reddick winning Super Bowl MVP. I would say those are.
Yeah, you want to hear something interesting?
Odds.
Just show you how low key people sleep on Smitty. Nick Bosa's plus 4,000 and Smitty's plus 4,500 to win Super Bowl MVP. So it's only a plus 500 difference. Wow. We're talking about one of the most, obviously wide receiver has grown into one of the most important positions in football, but nothing ever tops pass rusher with left tackle and quarterback. And to see that difference, that just shows you Smitty is that guy. And that's why I'm repping the Smitty jersey on here. But thank you guys for tuning in to the Paisan Sports podcast today. And make sure you guys go check out all of our social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. We're on there live. We'll be back on Thursday with the AFC and the NFC championship previews.
Sayonara.